These are Père David's deer, but they were supposed to be extinct in the wild for over a century. What you're seeing should be impossible. This is the story of how one of the world's most mysterious animals came back from the dead, and what happened next shocked even the scientists who made it possible. The Milu deer was once one of China's most prized animals. With its bizarre combination of traits, the hooves of a cow, the neck of a camel, the tail of a donkey, and the antlers of a deer, it became a creature of legend. For centuries, the Milu lived in China's vast marshlands, hidden from the world in royal hunting grounds like Nanhai, a private imperial preserve south of Beijing. The species was so closely guarded that ordinary people rarely saw one. But in the 1800s, everything changed. China was modernizing rapidly, and marshes were being drained for agriculture. The remaining animals were confined to fewer hunting enclosures, making their survival completely dependent on humans. In 1865, French missionary Père Armand David became the first Westerner to document the species. His efforts led to several specimens being sent to European zoos, an act that would prove crucial for the species' survival. Back in China, disaster struck. In 1894, catastrophic flooding of the Yellow River devastated the preserve. Hundreds of deer drowned. Then came the Boxer Rebellion in 1900. Desperate soldiers and starving locals slaughtered the remaining animals for food. Within months, the Milu deer had been entirely wiped out from China. Their only survivors were scattered among European zoos, most notably in England, where the Duke of Bedford gathered them in Woburn Abbey. For decades, it seemed their story was over. The Milu's survival was made possible by British conservationists who recognized what had been lost. Robin and Angela Russell, descendants of the Duke of Bedford, believed these animals carried a moral obligation. The deer belonged in China, and it was time they went home. The Russells reached out to conservationist Maria Boyd, who began researching the feasibility of reintroducing an extinct species. What she discovered was encouraging. The Chinese government was already considering similar plans. As environmental awareness grew in post-Mao China during the 1980s, there was renewed interest in ecological restoration. The Milu deer was seen not only as a species worth saving, but as a living symbol of China's forgotten ecological greatness. Boyd initiated contact with Chinese officials, and the government welcomed the idea enthusiastically. Several sites were considered, but the location that stood out was Nanhai. Ironically, the same former imperial hunting ground where the Milu had once thrived. With help from the World Wildlife Fund and international advisors, they began preparing Nanhai for the return of its lost inhabitants. This wasn't just about moving animals. It was about restoring balance, legacy, and national pride. In 1985, the historic reintroduction officially began. Moving these deer across the globe was extraordinarily complex. Each deer underwent extensive medical checks and was housed in specially modified transport crates. Upon arriving in Beijing, the Milu were transported to the Nanhai site, now officially designated as Milu Park. Despite all the preparation, the reintroduction faced immediate difficulties. Some deer fell ill from climate stress and transportation trauma. Others exhibited confusion and distress. But these challenges didn't deter the conservationists. Regular monitoring and gentle acclimatization gradually calmed the herd. After the initial shock, the deer began exploring their new home and showing signs of adjustment. In 1987, a female Milu gave birth inside the reserve, the first time in almost a century that a Milu had been born on Chinese soil. It was biological proof that the species could not only survive, but reproduce in its ancestral homeland. But just as momentum was building, a harsh realization hit. Nanhai was too small. The reserve was rapidly being surrounded by urban development, and the habitat was artificial. The deer were receiving supplementary food and manually managed water sources. For the Milu to thrive without intensive human management, they needed a larger, more natural setting. The Chinese government approved a plan for a second, much larger reserve, the Dafeng Milu Nature Reserve, in Jiangsu Province. In 1986, 36 Milu were chosen from British institutions for the second wave. The deer were flown from London to Shanghai in a specially chartered cargo plane, then transported to the remote Dafeng site. Despite exhaustive planning, not everything went smoothly. Several deer showed travel-related distress, and one died during transport. These were animals born in managed enclosures, now expected to adapt to fluctuating tides, thick reeds, and unpredictable weather. In the first weeks at Dafeng, the Milu exhibited stress-related behaviors. But within months, biologists began recording remarkable changes. The deer were learning to navigate the wetland landscape, identifying edible plants, and choosing natural shelter. Most significantly, they began favoring local wetland plants over supplemental food. This proved the deer were no longer dependent on human feeding and could support themselves through natural foraging. By the early 2000s, many of the original 36 deer had bred successfully. In 2006, just 2 decades after their arrival, Dafeng reported a population of over 950 deer. This figure shocked experts. No one had predicted such rapid growth for a species extinct in the wild for nearly a century. Their social behaviors also evolved dramatically. Natural hierarchies reemerged, and the deer exhibited wild territorial patterns. They adapted to seasonal monsoons and learned to migrate within the reserve's boundaries, survival traits once feared lost after generations of captivity. By 2013, biologists recorded over 3,000 Milu deer at Dafeng, more than half of the entire global population. That number had started with only 36 deer transported from the UK. This success came from the animals adapting to Dafeng's tidal wetlands and learning to survive with minimal human support. The deer developed new behaviors suited to their habitat, wallowing in mud during hot summers and forming protective groups during wet seasons. Key to this transformation was Dafeng's varied terrain. Mudflats, tidal creeks, reed beds, and salt marshes. The environment offered a unique blend of challenge and opportunity that allowed the Milu to reclaim their wildness. Public interest soared. The reserve became a UNESCO-recognized conservation site, and the Milu deer were elevated in Chinese culture as symbols of national ecological achievement. The presence of the Milu created a ripple effect, revitalizing an entire ecosystem. In 2023, researchers noticed something that surprised even seasoned ecologists. Areas frequented by Milu deer were regenerating faster than those left untouched. Milu trails were aerating waterlogged soil, allowing native vegetation to re-establish in places long dominated by invasive reeds. For many scientists, this was the moment the project's scope shifted from species preservation to ecosystem engineering. As one ecologist admitted, "We expected to save a deer. We didn't expect it to help save the land." The revelations sparked new debates. If the Milu were playing such a functional role in wetland balance, should they be reintroduced to other threatened ecosystems? China's Forestry Administration began surveying new wetland areas as potential satellite habitats.
What concerns researchers now isn't whether the Milu will survive, but whether the environments around them will. Rising sea levels are already affecting salinity levels at Dafeng, and long-term planning has shifted to disaster contingencies. International interest is growing. Delegations from multiple countries have visited Dafeng to study the reintroduction framework. The United Nations included the Milu recovery in its Global Restoration Flagship list. For scientists today, the shock isn't that the Milu came back, it's what they've become. Not just survivors, but central figures in a rapidly changing ecological future. The Milu deer story rewrites our understanding of what's possible in conservation. It proves that extinction doesn't always have to be permanent, that species can retain genetic memories across generations, and that successful restoration can exceed even the most optimistic projections. But perhaps most importantly, it shows that the animals we save might end up saving entire ecosystems in return. What started as an impossible dream has become a blueprint for bringing life back from the brink of extinction. The Milu deer are no longer just survivors, they're authors of conservation's future. What do you think about this incredible conservation success story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.